I installed, I don't know, 5 or 6 packages this year, maybe 7, and for demonstration purposes and for our new bee yard, which is at Boulder Knoll. That's called the CBA Boulder Knoll Bee Farm, Bee Yard. And it is, you'll see directions to that on our website. And our June 18th inspection will be at that new yard. And I'm hoping you all come because it's a beautiful yard made just for teaching. We got a great top bar hive there. We've got a wonderful, we got brand new colonies, but they'll be up to speed at that point. We can demonstrate splits and do lots of things. So I'm hoping that I see you guys all at our new location the first time we open it up. Our ceremonial opening is June 18th, assuming, and this is an assumption, that I am tested negative in Bangkok on the 10th, and I can get on my flight to come home. But for those of you who don't know, I'll be traveling to Thailand on Saturday, this coming Saturday, a few days from now. And I will be in Thailand with the University of Florida and a bunch of undergrads, which already are proving to be quite entertaining. So we'll go, we're going to travel all through Thailand with them and observe bees, all 9, 11, or 13, however you want to classify it, all of Apis, including Apis mellifera, Serrana, Koscheznikov, dorsata, florea, adreniformis. All of the Apis bees are in Thailand, in some part of Thailand. We're going to focus on 4. I'm going to be traveling around, and I'll be there till June 10th. I'm actually enrolled in a university course, and they're making me take exams and write stuff and all of that. So it should be a lot of fun. So anyway, so that's, I won't be back until the 10th. And if I don't pass my test, I'll have to go down to the vacation islands down in Thailand and spend another 2 weeks there in the sun. And Thai massages are great down there, and they make wonderful cocktails. So, who knows if I'll ever come back. I mean, no, I'll be back. So anyway, while I'm gone, Jose, hold your hand up. There's Jose. He's our vice president, and he will be in charge, and he will be taking all of your abuse from now until I return. So feel free, and he'll be there. All right. Okay. So now, so tomorrow I have no time for CBA because I have all my preparation stuff to do in my own bee yards. And I have a bunch of other stuff, pre-flight stuff to do. So if you have a question, sometimes I get a rash of questions after Bee Talks is over from folks who are, understandably don't want to air their question out in the open, maybe in an audience like this. But if you don't do it this time and you send us an email, it could be a while before you get an answer. So I encourage you to ask your questions tonight. Did our Bloom calendar folks show up here? Anybody have any contributions to the Bloom calendar?
I went to Ohio to pick up bees a couple weeks ago in a snowstorm. And on the way back, I saw reddish pinkish flowers, which I assume was some kind of crabapple. And then I saw red purplish flowers. I mean, you can see them because the background was all white because they just got snow. And it dawned on me, redbud was blooming.
Oh, redbud, yes.
So I got home from the bee thing, and they are maybe not quite the first legumes to bloom because they've never found nitrogen fixing nodules on the roots, so it might not technically be a legume anymore. But today I noticed wisteria blooming, so that might be our first real legume to be blooming. And I saw a couple, I can't remember what else I saw lately. I saw a bunch of black tulips someplace, but I'm not sure if bees use them.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they do.
Olive trees, but that was mentioned already.
Yeah, the almond olive is out. There's a bunch of other little blooming. Let me share this. So everybody wants to know. So Michael has this interesting, hold on, let's see. Michael's been following this, this dilemma about redbud. There's Eastern redbud. And it's a tree-like. Wouldn't you consider that a tree, Michael?
I think it gets about 8 inches diameter. I think it's kind of a tree.
Yeah, and it's a really good source for bees this time of year. You know, you see these things and you say, well, what is that? Is that a, you know, if you're not familiar with the sort of floral sources that bees visit, then you might think, well, maybe this is a, you know, something else, a crab apple or something. But no, this is a tree that bees love to work. There's a few of them around here, and if I had the access to my bloom calendar right now, I'd show you everything that I have for May that comes up. But let's stick with what we have. Does anybody else see anything? Well, actually, you know, I've noticed for the first time in like 3 years, I'd say, in my area, bees worked dandelion really, really well. So I don't know what kind of preseason we have to have for dandelion to show up with nectar, but this year it did, and they were bringing in that beautiful bright like orange pollen. So and dandelion still up if your lawn was cut or the big fields were cut once, you know, you're going to get nice rebloom on dandelion. They'll still be up. The other thing that's out is at this point is all of the wild a crab apple, if it's wild somewhere or not, just not cultivated. That bloom is just about past, but a tree of apple blossom at this time, or cherry. Well, cherry not so much because they don't work cherry as much, but they do work the apple piece. So that's how, and those are lots of blooms. And if you're near an orchard, of course, if you're unfortunate enough to be near an orchard, your bees will be on those blooms, and that could be fatal for them this time of year because right after bloom fall, they spray extremely toxic pesticides, and if they haven't mowed the understory, your bees are down there on the dandelion, sucking up all of that poison. Happens to my bees kind of regularly at this point, so I have to really think about where my apiary is and whether or not I want to continue to keep it there. I've been noticing that I get a bunch of entombed cells in my comb, so I'm tossing those, but that's the sort of indication that bees are really getting stressed and they're taking it out on the comb. All right. Anything else, Michael?
Well, you said dandelions.
Yeah, dandelion's still out. Yeah.
Something's blooming because my allergies went berserk this week. So I noticed the birch trees have tassels on them this week.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. So some of the so here, let me just bring up 21s. Some of the soft maples are, because they're behind a little bit. So I'm going to share another screen with you. I did find my bloom calendar. And that's the thing about Jose's way more organized than I am. So you'll have a good time with him. All right. All right. You see that bloom calendar? No?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, so let's take a look at May. So blueberry is out. And that's those are cultivars. But if you have a farm near you that's growing blueberries, your bees will be on them. You know, variegated yellow archangel is a beautiful ground cover that's usually covered with bees in the early part of May. Yellow rocket is a ground cover. It's kind of a orchard ground cover. Sometimes it's used it's a mustard, I think. And then autumn olive, ground ivy's out, holly, wild blackberry. Now I have a kind of honeysuckle that bees don't honeybees don't use, but bumblebees use. And I observed that in a trail where I walk. Carpet bugle, it's a little low growing perennial that you'll find at the edge of your lawn or in your lawn. Believe it or not, there are thousands of plants in some areas, and bees will go to them and use them. Now, at the end of the month, we will get the infamous black locust, which is our treat that tantalizes beekeepers, but sometimes just does not produce nectar. And the thing about black locusts is they can flower and drop they get petal fall in a day, so, and then, or they can last 2 weeks. They're very subject to, would you say, rain, right, Michael? Rain. And
Yeah, rain will take them out in minutes.
yeah, rain will take them out in minutes. And I know that I've heard folks say, like Larry Connor grew up in Connecticut, and he was a beekeeper that was pretty prominent, is pretty prominent still. And he said that he saw black locust last hours one year. Okay, white Dutch clover is coming around at the end of the month, so that's what we're going to look for right at the beginning of right at the end of May. So you can see white Dutch clover, raspberry, or we call the brambles. So that'll be raspberries come out first, blackberries come out a little bit later. And then we alternate leaf dogwood, another wild plant that is a native to Connecticut. If you ever get an opportunity to purchase one of these little alternate leaf dogwoods, or you want to go buy them, you do yourself a favor, grows like a weed, and it will just be covered with, you think it's a swarm, it gets covered with pollinators, but mostly honeybees. Bittersweet, I hate that, but it does bloom. Beauty bush is also out, and that's a specialized shrub. But just 2 of those in your neighborhood, if you only have a couple colonies and enter and fight this, bees will find them. And then, of course, early June, I won't be back. I'll be back there around June 10th. You can see that's when the holly trees come out. And then our first sumac, smooth sumac, will bloom around the first week in June. All right, so that's basically what I've observed over the years. These are all 2021 stuff. I didn't do it for this year, but I've noticed that over the 6 or 7 years that I've been keeping this calendar, they are within days, even when it's even when people have complained about the increasing climate temperatures. It seems like these particular plants are pretty faithful to the time they normally bloom every year. So, all right.
I also saw wild strawberries blooming down in Easton.
Oh, the little one, those little tiny ones?
Yeah, I think the painted turtles come by and eat them up.
Yeah, they're a nice little berry. I mean, they're so sweet. I mean, God, the berry is what? It must be a quarter of an inch or something. It's not.
Yeah, size of an eraser.
Yeah, but you can eat it, if you don't mind getting it. Stomachache. Right, somebody has.
Hey, Bill, do bees like that wild garlic that's so invasive?
What? Wild
Do
garlic?
bees like that wild garlic that you see now that's so invasive that you see sort of on the edge of woods?
Oh, no,
It
that's
has like
not,
a white
that's
flower.
not wild garlic. That's garlic onion. Yeah, that is an import that was brought over from, I can't remember sometime in the early 20th century. And it was actually brought over for consumption, human consumption. Bees, I will work that. It's all over the place. I hate it because it just crowds every natural plant out of the understory, and it's all over the place. And it has a real long-lasting, what they call seed bank. So once it gets established in your yard, its seed bank falls down. The seeds fall on the ground, and they burrow into the soil, and it can last for 5 years in there. So you can pull them out every year. They'll come back. You got to pull them out for 5 years in a row if you don't want them in your ground. But yeah, that's a horrible invasive. Wild onion is a delight. And but we request, oh, not wild onion, wild garlic I was thinking of. Wild garlic is a delightful little plant, and I will pluck them out of the roadside. The environmentalists don't like you to play with wild garlic because it's sort of a wonderful native species that they want to encourage its growth. But I plant them in my garden, and they don't grow very big, but they get a great little, I forgot the name of the head that develops on them. And then you can use those tiny little garlics that have come up on the top of that head and squash them into salads. It's great stuff. All right, that's it.
I have a question again,
Sure.
Melissa. Do bees generally like the same type of flowers that a butterfly would like, or it's totally not the same at all?
Yeah, it's not the same.
Oh.
No, butterflies have so the bees have a certain size tongue, a proboscis, they call it, a proboscis, I'm sorry. And bees have that, a certain size, and that makes them sort of a generalist in terms of lots of plants they can go to. But if you look at the proboscis of a butterfly, it's long and curled, and could get into flowers that bees can't get into. But you can't generalize about bees. I showed you the list of what I think is probably most everything that bees will forage on in, say, May. But you're going to come up with some more, like Michael did, the wild strawberry and some other things. So no, you can't say that as a general rule.
Okay, thanks.
All right. What do we got in the chat there, Jose? Anything?
Yeah, so we have a few questions. Ram is asking about some YouTube clips that he saw where they advise to kill or remove drone and queen bee cells to increase the production of honey, and he wants to know if that's true.
Well, it's too general of a statement for it to be true, because behind that statement, I think I wouldn't know how to actually answer that, because whoever wrote that really thinks am I getting this right, that they think that taking drones out of a colony will make that colony produce more honey? Is that what they're saying? The removal of drones will do that?
Well, no, he writes kill or remove drone and queen bee cells, which doesn't
Well,
make
that's
sense.
just yeah. So no, what that comment is getting at is trying to control a swarm. So I'll answer it in the way that I think is more in concert with the biology. So if a colony reproduces, and by the way, that's its main, a bee colony has two functions, especially in a temperate zone. And Apis mellifera, by the way, is the best at this. It's to survive winter and then reproduce. And that's what they do. They try to survive winter by putting up honey, and then they reproduce in the spring. If they reproduce in the spring, you're going to lose 40 to 50% of the colony and the old queen. So that's swarming, and swarming involves, it's a very involved process. We don't have the time to talk about it here. And we know that it can be a reproductive I think most of the swarms that we have are reproductive swarms. There's other reasons why bees swarm. They swarm because sometimes they're too crowded to stay in that space, whatever. But still, what that person is getting at is they've simplified that scenario to say, all you got to do is cut the swarm cells out and the colony will not swarm. Now, if you preserve the population of a bee colony past swarm season, it'll make a lot of honey for you. And because it has its full force of bees, you didn't lose half in a swarm. So yeah, you can either, once a colony swarms, it's not likely to make a whole lot of honey, but sometimes it does make some for you. But so that's what that person's getting at. But it's simplistic and probably not practical enough to say that that's all you have to do. And then the drone population has nothing to do with it. It would be how you manage your swarms in your colonies. And it is a good time to start talking about that because we're right getting on top of swarm season. As soon as we hit some of those, a major flow of some kind. Well, right now, bees are building cells. I have 2 colonies that I'm going to walk away from and go to Thailand, but I know they're building cells and they'll swarm. So I think I'm about 10 days away from swarms in my own yard, and I'm sure that there are some colonies in your yards that are also preparing to swarm. And at this point, that's when I would split. I would do it a lot before this, actually. I didn't do it in my own yard, but I'm suggesting that you would remove some brood from that colony earlier, sometime in April, and continue to harvest brood out of it and try to slow its growth down a little bit if you had a big boomer. And that sometimes gets you past swarm season with a colony. The other thing you can do at this point is if you have a bunch of swarm cells in a colony, look through it thoroughly and make a split or put up a nuke with some of those swarm cells and see if you can raise your own queen. I mean, it's a nice, swarm queens are very good queens usually. And right now you got a good flying drone population. And so you can mate out a queen if you're in an area where there's a decent drone congregation, or you can mate out a queen fairly robustly. So.
Here's another question. I've been having problems with fermentation of sugar syrup. Any thoughts? I saw a mention by Randy Oliver of bleach or thymol.
I'm so if you're having trouble with if fermenting, you're leaving it on too long. So you got to get out there more often and if it won't, just put enough on so they take it down. If they're not taking it down, then it'll ferment. But you just put enough on so they take it down, then fill it with clean syrup. And what you do is keep your supply either refrigerated or don't make it until you actually need it. And then that's how you deal with that. Don't add anything to it. No, don't add thymol or Clorox to it. I mean, you wouldn't drink Clorox, so don't give it to your bees. Actually, if your bees might take that water down, and they will from a swimming pool, but it has to invariably affect their microbiome. So they have the same kind of biological process that we do. They depend on gut biota to digest food, and giving them chlorine when all you have to do is up your game on feeding syrup is my idea is not good. Randy has 1,000 colonies. Right? So that's what he's dealing with. You only have 1 or 2. You can get out there and change the syrup.
So if they're experiencing fermentation, it may very well be an indication that those bees don't need to be fed, and you're leaving that syrup on there for no good reason. Some folks do suggest putting in a little bit of apple cider vinegar in that thing, but if your bees are not taking that syrup, if it's there long enough to be fermented, they don't need to be fed.
Right. So I think we agree on that.
Yeah.
And then so the idea of putting apple cider vinegar in it, and then another thing is that to balance the pH, because there's some sort of old folklore, bee folklore about us needing to actually replicate the pH level of honey, and you absolutely do not need to do that.
Bob and Linda have a question, but
they swarmed yesterday. I knew they were going to swarm. They were so crowded in there. So I don't have the equipment to split a hive. And to be honest with you, I'm happy with just one hive. My question is, in observing the hive this week, I've noticed I've had white larvae dead outside the hive and some very small bees. And I'm concerned. I don't know what's going on. Everything I've read, there's so many different things that could be happening, but I don't want to go in the hive because last year, if they did build a queen, she needs time to mature, and I shouldn't be going in to examine, to do an inspection. So I don't know what to do right now. Just wait the 10 days to go in to do an inspection or just observe it outside. Maybe 2 white larvae, but I'm concerned that they're the little bees. I don't know whether it was so crowded in there, they just threw them out. They had no place to go. I don't know.
No, that's funny. No, I mean, it's not funny. It's a great observation. So you got, like you saw these little bees. Yeah, no, I don't see if, all right, so if your colony swarmed, right?
Yep.
It's done, it did its own split.
Yes.
So you don't have to do one now. And you do,
No.
you have to leave that colony alone a little bit because now they're trying to raise a new queen.
Yes.
So let's assume that they left in a traditional way. They read the book and they said,
Yep.
okay, as soon as the swarm cells are capped, I'm going. So it's, let's say it's on day 9, right? So now you have to mark in your calendar because about 7 days from now, the virgin queens will emerge.
Okay.
All right. So you got 7 days from now. And then she'll need 3, 4, 5 days to mature and go on her mating flights. So at this point, I don't think you should go in there and do much work. I don't think your bees are little unless they're some kind of other little forager that's hanging around the colony. I would ignore the larva piece.
Okay.
And I would just say, I'm going to see if this colony comes up queen right. So you've got quite a while for this colony to come up queen right, but you have to, you're going to have to make sure that happens, right? So
Yes.
you don't
Yeah.
have a queen in that colony right now. And you got about an 80% chance that colony will come up.
Okay. Well, this one that just swarmed, this same hive swarmed last July. They did make a queen. They wintered over fine. And I guess she just was a laying machine. So it got really crowded in there. So I have a bottom screen board. I'm not seeing a lot of mites. I treated them in the fall. Everything seems good. The bees that I watch going in and out, I don't see any mites. So
No. Okay. So let me stop you there. You never see mites.
oh,
They're not on the tops of bees. They're on the bottoms. And so you're never going to see them. So everybody that heard that, get that out of your head. You can't see your mites. You got to test them. You got to roll with alcohol or do a sugar shake, whatever you want to do. Yeah. You don't see mites. Right. So they're invisible to you, not to the bees though. And especially the bees that are coming in and out of the colony. Those are foragers. And they are not likely to have mites on them as much as the nurse bees would, because that's where mites really congregate, on the bottoms of nurse bees, because nurse bees are going over open larva cells. And as soon as that larva matures to the exact right time, the mite will release from the bottom of that nurse bee and jump in that cell. All right. So that's how they reproduce. So yeah, you can't see them.
so it's really not a terrible thing to let your bees swarm. It's really nature doing her own thing.
Yeah, it is. That's just lower your expectations about the colony. At that
Okay.
point. So your expectations, you're not going to make a bunch of honey,
No,
but you get
I
to
just enjoy the bees.
Okay, good. So you get to enjoy the biology. Now, the only problem with it is that, there's other issues with it, but we're not going to talk about it here. But as long as your neighbors are okay, because they can bivouac on your neighbor's flagpole and then they go crazy. They think you're crazy anyway for having bees, and then these things come over and
Yeah.
So
We've got
Okay,
a couple of
thank you.
hands up, but please keep them up. Let's get through a couple of questions in the chat first, and then we can. I promise we'll get to you. Wild Dorothy is asking.
Wild Dorothy,
Yeah, Wild Dorothy. She overwintered her hives using the condensing hive method. Should she continue to keep her entrance reducer at 3 inches and block the upper entrance?
Well, she didn't do condensing hive method with an upper entrance because they don't have them. All right, so and you can leave your entrance reducer at 3 inches. That's fine. and you're good to go. But they survived, that's great. But in a condensing colony, you wouldn't have that upper entrance. Because that's if they're like wildly I couldn't help it. They're wildly attacking that upper entrance. They'll have to learn how to go down into the bottom entrance on their own. But
You were correct that I did not have an upper entrance for the winter.
it says upper entrance. Oh, block the upper entrance.
Because now I've taken the box off, the insulating box.
Well, there wasn't any upper entrance there, right?
No, there wasn't.
Or I'm confused.
Yeah, your question said,
And block.
So once I took the insulating box off, I went back to my normal configuration, which was the inner cover on top, and mine has an opening. So
Oh.
I've just been blocking it with my telescoping cover.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay.
And block the upper entrance. Now I got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah, see, all right. Okay, we're good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Neil, you did a great thing there.
Graham says that his beehive has no laying queen based on remaining brood that he saw in April. She last laid about April 16th. This past Tuesday, did not find a queen, and he put a queen into the upper deep. You, meaning Bill, I suppose, said that he should see how she is after a couple of days. Today, I could not see her without removing the cage, but saw that there is a bee in the cage, and the bees walk on it and interact, but that's it. They're not trying to sting or clustered around her. Can I conclude she's okay and being accepted?
Well, yeah, you can take the cork out now if you want to be really conservative. Take the cork off over the candy plug and let them just release her on her own if you want. But don't follow my technique on releasing queens. I mean, I will release queens a lot sooner than I would recommend you do. If you are totally convinced you saw a bee inside, I'm sure you mean you saw the queen inside. At this point, I would say you probably could release her, but just spend the extra day or two. Poke a little bit of that, get a nail, take the cork out of the candy side of your cage, get a nail that's not long enough to skewer the queen, and help them remove some of the candy out of there, and just let them for another day. They'll take her right out, and you'll know for sure.
My question was about swarming, because both my hives swarmed, and I was able to catch both the swarms. But I went back into the hive they swarm from, and I was worried because as I'm pulling frames out, I'm breaking queen cells. So that timeline you just spoke about was important, because my first hive swarmed on April 25th, and I went in there yesterday. So they should have made another queen, right?
You broke swarm cells yesterday?
Yeah.
Right. So how did you catch the swarms?
So the first one, it just flew about, I don't know, 20 feet and landed in this pricker bush. And I called my mentor and I said, my bees just, they're in the tree there. I heard them buzzing and stuff like that. So I got boxes and I cut all the prickers from underneath, and I put 2 mediums underneath, and I had frames on the side, like 3 on each side and a hole in the middle. And I gave it a big shake and they all fell in. I put the cover on and she said, now we wait. And they all went in and it worked perfect. So
you're a beekeeper.
I am, but then I made a major mistake. So a few days later, I decided I wanted all my bees in a row, all my hives. So now I'm going to have.
Yeah. So how many days later?
Oh, probably like a week later. I decided I was going to put them in line with the other
But you left
bees.
that colony there for a week where you should. Yeah. No. Yeah. You can't. I already know what happened.
Yeah. I caught them twice.
Yeah.
So I moved them into a new location right in line with the other ones. I thought I was doing great. And
they left to go back over that bush, didn't they?
Yep. They went back to the bush.
Yeah,
So-
because you can't do it that way. So
Yeah.
now, you know the correct
I
way
do.
now. All right.
Yep.
So explain the
Definitely.
correct way so people know.
Right,
If
right.
you
So
want
yeah,
to move that box, if you wanted to move the box you shook the swarm in, what would you have to do?
move it 2 miles.
But you can't do that 10 o'clock in the morning though, right? You'd have to,
I did it at night.
yeah, so at night you would cage them,
Yep,
get them all in.
yep.
And then the next morning, that's when you move the box. You want to
Okay.
get the field force back in the colony because you want to move the whole thing, including the field force.
Okay.
So if
Okay.
you do that during the day, even if you thought you did it right, like close the entrance and then move the box.
Yep.
You might have 4,000 or 5,000 bees out in the field.
Oh, but I did it at like 9 o'clock at night when it was dark. So they were all in there.
They were all in there. Okay, yeah, all right.
They
So-
were all in there,
and then
but
you moved it.
I moved it, but they moved back and I caught them again. So did that queen actually fly out to that pricker bush again?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Oh,
So
no,
seriously-
no. No, I don't, I doubt if the queen, I don't know. I can't answer that, but no, that was probably the foragers in that colony.
Okay. It was huge. It was really huge. So
I mean,
so my-
if they swarmed out of that box that you moved 10 feet or however long, and they went all back to that bush, that would be pretty cool. I don't,
yeah,
I wouldn't,
It
I haven't seen that happen.
yeah, it was crazy. But my concern is the hive they swarmed from. I wanted to make sure that they had a queen now. And I went
Well,
in,
yeah, so if you broke all the queen cells,
well, I broke some because they were stuck. So for me to get a frame out, it opened up some of the, and it's been since April 25th. So does that give enough time?
well, how many days is it?
Today's what, the 12th? So 12,
20 days.
yeah, that's like
Yes.
20 days.
That gives it plenty of time.
Okay, so I can go in there and not worry about, because sometimes I say I do more damage, I think, when I go into my hives than if I didn't go in.
Don't use that. You're not going to get away with that excuse, son.
Okay.
You're
Okay,
gonna get in there and take a look. You got to learn the
Okay.
biology. That's the only way you can do it.
okay. How about, so my new hive makes some funky comb. Should I scrape out when it's not uniform and stuff like that? Should I scrape that out and tell them try again?
What do you mean your new comb? Your new
Well,
hive? You mean the
the-
swarm hive?
The swarm, yeah, the swarm that I caught.
They're not building on the foundation?
It's on the foundation, but
Kind of off
no.
it?
Yeah, it's off of it.
Is it black foundation?
Nope, it's the
Red
light colored yellow.
I mean, so bees do that sometimes. They really they want to play games with us, so they won't use the foundation we give them. I don't know. But
Okay.
I wouldn't scrape it off. But I got to ask you the fatal question is this: did you make sure all of the shoulders were really nice and tight against each other?
I did, because I learned that from you, and I had been doing that wrong for a long time. So I
And they
definitely
still-
did that.
And they still built this crazy comb.
Yeah. So I scraped it off. I told them
Start
at it.
over. Now you
Yeah.
scraped off the new. So you.
it was
now
just a
what-
little. It was like 3 inches.
Okay,
by-
all right. Yeah.
Yeah. It wasn't huge. So here's another funny story. So, okay, I caught I caught 3 swarms. I caught one twice and my other hive.
That
swarm-
doesn't count. That doesn't count. No.
Well, whatever.
You
But
caught
then
two.
yesterday I come home and I'm in the driveway. I'm just relaxing and I see a swarm flying overhead. And I followed them out to the field, into a tree. I actually tracked them and I'm like, that can't be mine again. And it wasn't, but it was crazy. I've never seen a swarm in my life. And this year it's like,
No, it's a
Six-
magnificent thing to see. I mean, this is the thing about beekeeping that I want to encourage everybody to embrace, because it's scary because you're engaged in animal husbandry and you don't really know what you're doing yet. And you will in a few years, you'll get it. But a swarm, the actual reproduction swarm, to be in the middle of that or just to see it move around is an amazing thing to watch. And this time of year is very exciting to me because I love swarm season, and I shouldn't, because all the colonies that swarm in my yards, it's an expensive swarm, sort of. But yeah, too bad you didn't have a swarm trap up because you could have caught your neighbor's bees wherever they came from. But are you positive that didn't come out of your yard?
I'm pretty sure. I looked, I went in yesterday to look at mine, and a half an hour later, I saw this happen. So I'm thinking it's not mine.
Yeah, okay.
So
I think it is.
Probably
You
is yours.
I think it is yours, bees,
Yeah, so do I.
why?
because you said you had queen cells that you ripped open,
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. I did.
So,
Oh,
and,
she has
Not-
other hives too, Michael.
and your swarm was 3 weeks ago, basically, give or take a little bit,
Yep.
20 days ago.
You think they swarmed again?
So that means, so those bees were protecting those queen cells. You probably had after swarms that you have no idea you had.
Yeah, or an after,
And-
or one after.
And so, because sometimes you get an after swarm every week. And I know this because I collected 4 swarms from this lady 1 week apart, almost like clockwork. And then she paid me every time I went and got them. I'll take them. I'll take the bees and the money.
Right.
So some bees, so let me ask you this. Are they carniolans?
Well, they're mutts is what.
Yeah. I got
Well-
them from Adam Fuller. So they came from Georgia a couple of years ago.
Okay, so they're probably, okay.
Yeah,
And,
ancestral heritage doesn't really play into it in this case.
So darker bees seem to swarm more often and have more after swarms.
Okay.
So I think they were your bees, and I think they were
do.
after swarms.
Okay.
Could have been.
So
They kind of
So, I
came
mean-
from that direction. My bees are probably about a half mile from my home. They're on my mother's property. And as I was in
Oh, okay.
when I was at my house yesterday, there was a couple bees that were like flying around. I think they were I thought they were scout bees looking for someplace to live, but I know there's other people in the area who do have bees also. So, I don't know.
Okay, so let's move on a little bit.
Okay,
What
thank you,
else-
Bill.
Thank you. What else we got?
So Susan's been patiently waiting. Please
Sorry,
unmute
Susan, my
yourself and-
apologies, Susan.
That's okay. You always learn, so I love to listen. I have several questions.
All right.
First, my one hive died over the winter. And I keep them, I'm up here in Maine, actually, finally getting up here to inspect. And I have 14 frames that are full of honey.
Okay.
So I don't know, they died, I don't know, well, I knew they were weak in October when I left, but, so I talked to this gal and she said, put them in a box. So now I don't have a box, so I have all these frames stuck in 5-gallon buckets because they were oozing honey. So what kind of box do I store them in, and when would I use that honey?
What kind of
Or-
frames are they? Deeps?
Yes,
So you have 14. So if you don't have any place to store them, then, and you don't have any bees at this point.
well, I do, because I had 2 hives, because after school with you last year, you said, I was just gonna do 1 hive. You said, no, you gotta do 2 hives. So 1 hive made it, and the other hive died at some point this winter. So I had the fellow who helps me up here, the caretaker, I said, take all the frames out, this was back in March, and put them in the freezer.
Yeah.
So we froze all the frames, and then he had to put some in the refrigerator because there wasn't enough room for the freezer for all of them. But I froze all the frames for about a week in case there was any moths or beetle or whatever in case there was something in them. So this gal that's up here said, you put them in a box and you use it later when you need honey for the bees. Because I wouldn't try to make this into honey because I can't remember. Of course, I left my notes at home. If I did proformic, I did a mite treatment in August because I wasn't trying to get honey last year. So, but she said you can use it later. But do I put them in Tupperware boxes, or what do I?
Well, I mean, if you're trying, what you're trying to do is you would have to keep them in the freezer. If you want to use them later, you got to keep them in the freezer, because if you've got unprotected honeycomb out in anything, boxes, pails, whatever it is, there's going to be you're going to attract some unwanted visitors to that. And you could even get wax. I don't know where you have them. You can end
Well,
up,
this is terrible. I'll show you right now. This is one bucket. I have this here that I have right now.
yeah, you're in trouble storing them like that. First of
So-
all, they're hitting each other. You're scraping open the caps. It's going to leak honey all over the place.
That's why they're in buckets. What do I do with the frames?
But yeah, like I said, the only way you can save those, I mean, I guess, well, I don't know, Lauren. do you-
Yeah, I put it in the chat. Hive Butler. If they're hivebutler.com, they're overpriced. I like them. I have a bunch of them. They're sealed, they're made for frames. So I put it in the chat for you. That's what I would do.
So
But is it too late for me to do that now, or should I just scrape them all down, clean them up and use them again down the road?
Well, no, I mean, I think you can do that now if you wanted to. You can spin out that honey. You can
Okay.
extract that honey in those frames if you don't have any place to store them. And then you have what they call stickies. You can put those back on the colony and the bees will clean them out pretty much overnight. And then so you would be able to use what little honey is left in those frames for the bees, because they open honey in the frame, they won't leave it there. They'll generally clean that out. And so you'd
But
have
is
a nice
that-
clean comb.
But is that honey from nectar, or is that honey from
It doesn't matter.
syrup that you fed the bees? Well, because she's going to spin it out. And,
Yeah, she's gonna spin it up, but I'm not
consume it.
I'm not telling her to eat it.
Right.
No, I wouldn't eat it because it is probably from sugar water.
Well, if you just want to get it out of, because my thought is you're better off trying to save that comb than you are anything else, because the comb's the valuable part.
Right. So
At this,
I don't have a spinner. What do? I just, I
you're,
could try to borrow one from somebody, but
there you go. You have to get it out of the comb some way or another. You can, if you don't have a spin, like, I don't know, you're stuck. If you can't extract the honey, or you don't want to store it, and like Lauren is suggesting, which I think is a good idea.
well, I'm happy to store it. But is it too late? Is it too late if they've been out of? You said they have to stay frozen.
No, they're fine. They're fine.
Oh, okay. Because I'm happy to
Yeah.
get. Okay, and then just put them in as they need it later in the winter or in the fall. I would give it to them later.
Well, yeah, you use them as food. Whenever your bees need them. I would look at the other colony that survived. That should be ready to swarm at this point.
Well, that's what I did do, and this is my next question. I don't know if you can see this. Can you see these larvae?
Yeah, kind
They
of.
want. I don't know how to. Ooh.
Yeah, we could see them.
So I opened the box and I had the caretaker put a pollen patty on it about 2 weeks ago, because when we had the last talk you were talking about sometimes if they don't have pollen, they start to cannibalize the larvae. So I said, let's throw a pollen patty in, and we had.
So that was a long discussion, and I'm sorry you got that out of it, but that's not. You don't have to feed them in that case. But what's your question?
So my question is, what are those? What are those larvae? Are those drones? Are those? They were on top, they're in sort of wax, but they were on top of some of the frames when I.
Yeah, those are drones. Those are probably drones. Yeah. So what they do is, because you have a double deep box, right?
Yes.
So what happens is they're looking to build drone comb this time of year. I don't know, Maine may be a little bit behind us here in Connecticut.
They're definitely behind you. We're definitely behind.
Yeah. So when you pulled those frames, you broke this comb structure that they build between the bottom bar of the top box and the top bar of the bottom box. They usually, this time of year, they put drones in there, and that's what you're looking at.
Okay. So because then I was like,
kind of hard to get those frames out, right?
Yeah. And they've been closed all winter. This was.
That's not the reason why. I'm just saying they're glued together by that comb. So it's hard. They're hard to get out. You got to struggle to pull them out sometimes. And when you do, then you find that whole broken row of drone on top of that. I leave it. If I do that and I break open all of those drones, I put that comb back the same way I found it. I leave all of that for them to clean up. They will consume that those larvae or get them out of the colony, and they'll use the royal jelly over. So there's lots of things you can leave them in there for.
Okay, because I did, the rest of my left, I just was like, I didn't know if that was a bad thing. And then when do I put honey supers on?
Well, remember, so I want to make sure that everybody understands this concept thoroughly. Beekeeping is not prescriptive at all, right? It's totally observational. You cannot learn how to be a beekeeper trying to figure out what, like I put them on May 5th. So, or so if you're asking for a date, the answer is, I don't know. You
But
have to
just
go by.
in general, I know it
Yeah.
can't be, I know you can't say like a specific date, but can you feed them? Do you keep feeding them and put the honey supers over the syrup?
No. You have to make sure that you have natural floral sources that are providing the bees with, you have to see if there's incoming nectar in that box,
Okay.
and so on and so forth to figure out when you put your supers on. The best time to put supers on is when you see white wax built on the top bars of the box. That indicates that the bees have collected enough nectar inside that colony that they're starting to like get anxious about where they're going to store their next round of nectar. So that's when you put your supers on. I would say dandelions is a good indication. You got them up there. Are they on?
Yep.
Put them on. Put your supers on.
Okay. And no, don't feed them. No sugar syrup.
No, you don't feed with supers on ever,
Okay.
because you're not going to make honey then. You're going to make I'm not going to get into the times when you actually do that, when you only
Okay.
want to draw.
I just
comb.
need general, because I'm just going into this is second season with the one box, and I started a new box, just installed a new hive. So I've got new neighbors and we'll see what happens with them. But I didn't even go for honey last year. I just wanted
Wait,
one hive.
wait, you installed a new box?
Next door. Yeah, because I bought a new package.
So why don't
We
you
did.
put some of that honey on them?
I could do that. Oh, okay. Should I take some of the empty frames out and put a couple honey frames in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you have, just foundation in there?
Yeah.
Now, are all of those 14 combs solid honey, or is there open spaces in it?
There's some open, but they were pretty full. That's what's pretty amazing. So it was a smaller, I think that they just didn't have enough manpower to make it through the winter. And I
That's
knew
that's woman power, by the way.
woman power. Yes. Okay. Oh, I don't want a hashtag, but I was
Examine that comb a little more thoroughly. Make sure there's not big spots where a queen can lay. You should probably be able to use 50-60% of that comb in that new package you built. If not, just stop feeding that package and put that honey on top of it, all 10 frames.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, we need to move along. The next question, Anthony has a very productive hive. It split 2 weeks ago, went into the parent hive today, still very productive. Capped queen cells seen. Last week, they were uncapped and removed. Put a Snellgrove board on top after locating the queen and keeping her below. Put brood with nurse bees and honey on top of Snellgrove. Queen excluder placed below super. Only issue is I did not remove capped queen cells below. Any suggestions?
Get in there, open the colony, take all the capped queen cells out of below, because the colony's just going to swarm. You did all of that work for nothing. As soon as those, as soon as there's a virgin queen in that colony, it'll go probably. So you got to be careful.
Bill, what's happening with that horizontal hive and all those drone cells in Woodbridge?
All right, somebody's got an open mic on. Thank you. We had to shake it out. And move it. We moved. The bees were hopelessly queenless, and they were building irregular comb, and so I shook them out and moved the colony, because we were leaving that yard, and I wanted that box to come with me because it's mine, one I made. So those bees found a home. I noticed exactly what they did. I shook them out in front of the top bar hive, and they went over to the other boxes and went in. So no loss. We kept the bees, but and I wasn't able to salvage any of the comb, except for the comb that I put in there. And then so that box is now functioning and operational in our new bee yard, and you'll see it because I put a new package in our bee yard, and that queen is very, very cooperative. And they built 6 or 7 brand new comb in that box already. So it's, you'll see it if you come to the bee yard.
Can 1-to-1 syrup be frozen?
Yeah. Yeah, you can freeze it. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can.
I'm new to beekeeping and going to acquire 2 nukes tomorrow to start my first 2 hives. Please suggest steps I should take for installation. Install one day at a time?
No, you can install them both at the same time. You don't have to do them one at a time. Make sure that if you install these 2 colonies, make sure you do something. Don't put them in a line right next to each other. So stagger them somehow, put them in different parts, give them plenty of space between them. If you can give them 10, 12 feet, and don't orientate the entrances the same. So you're not a commercial beekeeper, and don't act like one, because it'll make your life a little bit easier. First of all, have them back to back so the entrances are pointing out, so you can work in the middle of them, and then you'll be able to install them just like you install any nuke. You put that whole nucleus colony right in the center of your box. I'm sure it's a deep, because they really don't make medium nukes. Not that I've seen them. Anyway, I haven't seen any of them. You just put those 5 frames right in the middle, and then you fill in the rest of the 10 frames with, on the sides. And you should probably put a jar on, or feed them in some way, at least to get them started, for at least a little bit, maybe not a long time, but a week or so might be good. Watch what they do with that syrup. They'll start to draw comb with it. And that's it. You feed them because they're a working colony, and you're not releasing a queen. You're not doing anything strange, and don't mix them up. Put those frames, take them out, and put it in that new box, and take the next frame out and put it right next to where it was in the nuke. Same. So replicate the brood nest the way it was in the nuke box in your new colony.
The same person wants to know, can you also suggest a good hive inspection form? We do not have a hive inspection form that we publish. We may very well do that at some point, considering the various questions that we get from folks from time to time. Certainly once you begin to keep beehives, that's something that many people want to do. As you gain experience, those forms tend to go by the wayside, because you gain more experience, more and more what to look for, what's important to you, what's important for your hives, and you tend to minimize reliance on that. But no, right now we do not have a hive inspection form. You've talked about walkaway splits. Can you remind me what month would be best to try this?
Well, you can do them right now, because drones are flying. You can do them. It takes a while to get them up and working. A walkaway split has a lot of it takes a lot of time to get it queen right, because if you're doing it with swarm cells, it takes one amount of time, because you've already got a 9-day lead on making a new queen. If you're bringing this a walkaway split up from eggs where they're making emergency queens, it takes 7 days longer or 9 days longer to do it. But then, so then you got the queen has to go out, mate. She needs about 14 days. If the queen cells are ripe, it's about 14 days before she turns around and starts laying. And then you're looking at another 21 before you get any brood. So it's a long, long time before you get new bees in a colony that you do a walkaway with. But you can do them right now.
I have pollen in my supers. Is there a reason for this? Should I have done something to prevent it?
Is it a single box configuration? Are you trying to?
It's hi Bill, it's Tori Zeno. No, I have I have 2 deeps. And for the first time this year, in I think 3 of my hives, there's pollen in the supers. I would say on like 3 to 4 frames, like an 1/8 of the frame is pollen, and then maybe on one, like a 1/4 of the frame is pollen. I've just never seen pollen in the super, so I was wondering if I put them on too early or
No.
what?
So do you have queen excluders on them?
I do.
So that means that I think, so what that's usually an occurrence that's more common in a single frame arrangement. Now, so you have double deeps
Yep.
and maybe there's none, maybe they're not occupying the bottom box at all and they're just storing some pollen.
I've been in like diligently this year, like weekly, to make sure I could see what's going on. So
what's going on?
So I've manipulated so they have more room. I reversed a couple of them to make sure they're storing pollen in both deeps. There's room in both deeps.
And you got a laying queen.
And I have a laying queen.
You do have laying queens in all of them. There's nothing wrong.
Absolutely. Yes. Yep.
Yeah. You know what? So there's nothing wrong.
Okay.
At this point. So if I get pollen cells in my supers, and sometimes I do, sometimes I'll get a row or two of pollen in my supers. I just charge more for the honey because it's just fortified.
All right. So nothing to do in the future, nothing to be concerned about.
I wouldn't be concerned at all because my guess is that unless there's a queen up there.
No, I know for sure she's not.
All right.
Because I find her every time I go in, and that was like, right, I was concerned. No, she's not up there.
Yeah,
and you can see, like,
is you have upper entrances?
Yes, and you can see.
Ha.
Oh shit. Oh,
all
sorry.
right. So with an upper entrance and a big pollen flow, sometimes bees will drop the pollen as soon as they get into the colony. See, bees foraging nectar bees foragers that are foraging for nectar have an easier time because they come into the colony and they look for a retriever bee, a bee that's going to come and take the little, right, trophylactically feed this little drop of honey, and then they go out and they forage again. But that's not the same with the pollen. With pollen, they got to pack their own cell. So my guess is you have a really strong pollen flow. They're coming into that top entrance and they're packing the pollen in the first place.
Yeah, you can see in the top entrance on the outside of the box, you can see yellow and gold. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so you got a lot of pollen coming in and they're putting it right wherever they can. You made them do that.
How did I make them do that?
You made them do that with that upper entrance.
Okay, so should I not have an upper entrance?
I don't think you should ever run an upper entrance, but a lot of people do. I think it confuses bees. You get into situations like this.
Okay, so when I put my supers on, take my upper entrance off. Is that what you're saying?
I don't understand how you would take it off. How do you have an upper entrance? How are you accomplishing your upper entrance?
Like the inner cover, like it comes in. Like
oh yeah. All right. So the inner cover. Oh, I mean, and they're using it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now what'll happen is if you block that.
Yeah.
You'll have thousands of bees trying to get into the upper entrance. No, because they've learned to do it that way.
Yes. Right.
So I wouldn't disturb them at this point. I'd let it continue to do. And I think what you'll observe as time goes on here, what you'll observe is that they will fill, for the most part, they'll fill a lot of that super with honey.
That's what I'm seeing now. I am seeing now that it looks like more honey.
Yeah.
So like for next year in the future, just not. So how would I prevent that?
Well, I don't know. You can stop. Don't use an upper entrance. That will stop it. But they're preparing brood. See, that's what what I refer to as an energy interface. So they're saying that we're going to keep our pollen up here. Now, they do that in singles because they don't have any other place to put it.
Right.
So, but in your case, they should have plenty of room down in those boxes.
I know.
To put. Yeah, you got really good bees. Go ahead.
Thank you.
John T, maybe you can speak up because I don't know what you're asking in terms of your first question. But his second question is he's got a mean hive. He removed the queen, waited 5 days, checked and found queen cells, removed queen cells, made 5 frame splits with cells. And the second question is, will the daughters of the mean queen be mean?
Well, I mean, you're going to have to ask them when they come out.
Yeah, I had one hive where they were just nasty.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, they're going to be nasty. I
okay,
mean, yeah, they're going to have a nasty streak in them. So you just replicated the nastiness.
okay, well, I made her go away.
Well, yeah, I know, but she didn't actually go very far because you're using her daughters.
Okay, so what I did when actually I had another beekeeper I was talking with, and I was complaining about this one hive. He says, well, I'll take her. I said, I don't think you really want this one because she's a real, they're not happy. So he took her, and I was happy to make her go away without squishing her. But I waited, made sure they were queenless. And over the next couple days, I went into the hive and I started removing all the supersedure cells or emergency queen cells. And from those, I made two 5 frame nukes. One nuke did its thing. The queen hatched. One queen hatched, killed everybody else, and they're thriving. The second 5 frame nuke, a queen hatched, killed, or broke into the other cells, killed almost everybody, all the other queens. There were a couple cells that were still maturing, so they survived. She did come back. I did find her. And 2 days later, there was a lot of activity. They all left. I never saw them left. I mean, there was 0 bees in that 5 frame nuke, and there were still cat brood left behind. Everybody left. I've never seen that. I've never seen that before.
Well, I mean, it happens. So I know where they went.
Okay.
They went to your friend who took the hot hive. They went back to go see their mother.
I hope so.
It was Mother's Day just a few days ago. That's what they did. They went back there. No, so okay, so they absconded, and you got so you got this one colony. I'd buy a queen for that and then requeen that one. Emergency queens are not the same kind of queen as a swarm queen. They could be a little bit of an intercast. So you have to be very careful about swarm cells. The way supersedure cells. The way you deal with supersedure cells is it's kind of a complicated theory, but you have to think about it in terms of brood cycle. But usually you destroy, if you want the best supersedure or emergency queen, you would destroy the ones that are capped first. And leave a few that are capped later on. You get
so they force feed those.
Yeah.
But basically, so
no. That's they're taking older brood first, and then you're actually getting a cell from an earlier larva, a younger larva.
All right, but the meanness trait stays with the daughters.
But I'm going to say yes.
Okay.
So and anyway, you don't breed from hot queens. You don't do that. So that's a little bit of a maybe not. The nuke won't be hot at all. It'll take a while.
They seem to be fine.
Yeah, it'll take a while for them to get up to speed and then start stinging. But they'll sting you because they'll remember what you did.
Yeah. All right, so I'll call my friend and he can have another mean one.
Yeah, buy a queen.
Well, he has some, so I'll just swap him a mated queen for the mean one.
Okay.
All right.
What else we got here? We got some.
Someone did a walkaway split on April 23rd and scrubbed all of the but 3 of the queen cells on May 1st, and then on May 9th, all queen cells had hatched. Question is, how long after this split is it safe to do formic probe?
Well, so let's back up a little bit. If you're going to do a split with swarm cells, you're not the right person to select which ones you choose, right? So you don't know anything about them. You don't know which is going to be the best queen out of those swarm cells, you know. So you're better off if you're going to make a split and you're going to use swarm cells, use them all. You know, some will get broken in the process, and those, of course, you obviously can't use. But, you know, don't think you're the one that can actually pick and break off swarm cells and then select the ones you think you want to keep. It just doesn't work that way. You know, you're way over your head in the biology. So what I do is just use them all and put them all in one box if you can get them all in there. Sometimes there's 20 of them and you can't, but you know, so you know, that's what. Then how long can you use? I wouldn't do anything with a colony that small right now. I'd wait till it built a little bit, and then I would use Formic Pro on it also. But you don't have to use Formic Pro on that colony, because you can vaporize oxalic acid because it'll go through a broodless period.
Should there be some sort of opening or screen to optimize ventilation in the summer?
Not in my opinion. I use insulated topsoil summer long. You don't have to manage thermal regulation for bees. They do it despite your best efforts to screw it up.
I keep singles, and every year I see exactly what you mentioned. I see pollen in my supers, and it's exactly what you said, that they just want to put somewhere. They want to put it somewhere. And it's a little annoying when you want to spin all that honey and you think the frames are so heavy because of all that honey, but some of that weight is the pollen that's in there. But just swarming right now, I think is a big issue for a lot of people. And I don't know if you want to say a few things about what people should do to keep an eye on their hives to manage swarming as best they can.
Yeah, because you're likely not to be able to prevent it.
No.
Once they build queen cups. Now, there are some colonies that'll go through. I have a couple of them that aren't showing any signs that they are going to leave anytime soon. And usually if they're not developing queen cups at this point and haven't laid an egg in any of those queen cups, they're not likely to go. And even if they do lay an egg, you have to make sure that you go back into that colony in a day or two once you observe that and see if they allowed that egg to become a larva. So, and you would wait 3 days, of course, go back in the 4th day and see if that egg turned into larva, because sometimes they back off their own swarm urge. So swarming is a really mysterious thing. But once there's a larva in one of those queen cells, they are almost 100% certain they're going to advance the urge to swarm. And at that point, you have some options. That's when you can make your splits. You know, you can, you have to grab those little cups and put them in another colony if you want to make a split at that point. And you have to have the attitude that you're going to lose 40% of the bees, maybe even 50% of the bees anyway. So whatever you try at that point is a plus, because at least you'll have your brood force in good shape. You could use a double screen board. We don't have time to explain what that snow growth process is like. Somebody did it here and this year, and they were talking about how they did it, and they did it the right way, it sounds like to me, except that they left the swarm cells in the bottom box, and you really in the bottom box of that manipulation, all you really put is one frame of brood and the frame that the queen was on. And usually you put in their cap, you don't put any open brood in that box down on the bottom. So that's how you configure that thing in one of those double screen board manipulations. That's better shown than it is talked about, because it's a very complicated procedure. It makes a big stack of colonies, makes it hard to inspect. So really hard to do. Lots of old school beekeepers would just split a box right in half. They call it a 50-50 split, where they don't care where the queen is. They don't care what. It's a big, robust colony. It's pretty old school technique, because, they were dependent on having beautiful, robust colonies. We sometimes have to struggle against varroa and other diseases that our boxes aren't that robust these days. But, when colonies went on forever, they would just split them in half and put them on different stands, and the one would make a queen, one wouldn't. One would be queen right, one wouldn't be queen right. The one that wasn't queen right, they'd see the emergency cells in, and they would, they built a new queen and go from there. Then there's the managed sort of split you can do, which folks have talked about tonight. And you can do it that way.
So when adding a second deep, would you put that after the first one is 7 to 10 frames full? And if you do, this is just my own editorial, what, if any, frames from the first deep would you put up in the second deep?
Well, I mean, so I would take I would wait until there's like 8 frames. If you have a 10 frame colony, I'd wait until there's 8 frames built on the bottom, in the bottom box, or that first box you have. And I'd make sure that every time I looked at that colony and anything I did to it, at the end of any inspection I made, I'd squeeze those frames over to one side and squish everything out between the shoulders, and then come back and center those frames. So there's about a 3/8 of an inch space on each side. All right, so you've got nice uniform combs in there. You're gonna get a nice build. And then what you do is you wait until, like I said, there's 8 frames built out. And then you can take your, put on your second box. It's probably mostly foundation at that point. I'd bring up 1 frame of the comb that required nurse bee attention. So that means that it would have open brood and eggs. You know, if you have open brood in it, you know, a majority of open brood, that's the best frame to take. Put up there in the middle. Don't disturb the bottom brood nest too much. You're just taking 1 frame out, and put another frame of foundation, not in the middle of the brood nest where you just took that 1 frame out, but on the edge. And then let them build some comb for you up in that top box. You probably have to feed them, but if you bring up a frame of brood at that point, it's likely that the queen will, that the bees will follow. Well, the bees will definitely follow that frame of open brood, and then you'll have nurse bees up there that'll start to manage that colony. The top box will get more active with bees over time. So, of course, sort of encourages them. It's an old trick that Al Avatavlis showed me a long time ago, and it works really well. You don't have to do it that way. You can just throw on a box of foundation and start feeding them, and they'll come up eventually and get in there and draw comb for you. Now, when you do get them to draw some comb out for you in that top box, take some of that drawn comb, go down and backfill it in those foundation that you have down left in that bottom box. Don't leave those frames, those foundation frames on 1 and 10. Don't leave them as undrawn comb all season. Try to get drawn comb. You have to take it from the top box and put it back down in those empty spaces. So now you're dealing with all of your foundation and undrawn comb in 1 box. And that'll make a lot of sense to you later on when you'll see that the bees will fill those end frames with honey if you're lucky. And then you can, but you know that at that point, you know that all your bees, all the work bees have to do to draw comb are in the top box. You can feed them until they draw it all out.
So in terms of encouraging the bees to draw out all those 8 frames more quickly, perhaps, do you recommend switching some of the end frames with some of the inner frames? And if so, how would you do that? And presumably,
no, you don't do that at all. You leave the brood nest totally intact the way the bees are building it. Don't checkerboard frames in there. Don't do anything like that. I mean, you at that point, and there's lots of folks that discuss this, but here's my philosophy on it. You have no idea what the bees are building that brood nest for or how they're building. The architecture of it has evolved with bees over millions of years. They know exactly, for the most part, they know exactly what they're doing. Your intervention in trying to manipulate combs or pull the brood nest apart and put it in different parts of the box is just, you've given yourself a promotion that you don't deserve. No one does. That's a beekeeper. Your idea is to follow. In our situation, backyard beekeepers, you follow the bees' lead, lest they go queenless, or there's a lot of disease in there where you have to intervene as an animal husbandry person. Then you have to take care of them. Just like if your dog got sick, you bring it to the vet. If your bees got sick, you got to do something about their sickness, their illness. The one thing we always have to perpetually look at is our varroa levels inside colonies. You have to always look at that. So otherwise, my opinion is not to disturb the brood nest. Leave it alone. Except for that one manipulation I talked to you about, bringing up one comb out of the edge frames that aren't that important to the center.
Paul, do you have anything to add?
Just that June 18th is the first workshop at Boulder Knoll Community Farm
Yeah. And,
in Cheshire.
Yeah.
So come one, come all.
Yeah, we're there. Paul's going to cut the grass up there this weekend, right, Paul?
That's correct.
All right. So, so yeah, so we're looking forward to that. And I will write some blogs from Thailand, and I'll put them up and send them out over Wix. So you'll see some dorsata. That's the largest, one of the largest bees. It's actually the largest honeybee in the world. It's 3 times larger than our bees. And so I'll put up a little blurb about dorsata, and you'll see that bee, and whatever else I can think about if I get some spare time while I'm there. I'll do more work for CBA, and we'll see you guys at the middle of June.
Yep.
All right.